In this video, I'm going to reveal a secret hypnosis trick to get more sales and for your customers to have a better customer experience. Okay, so it's not really a secret because I talk about this all the time. I mention this all the time, but that was some pretty good clickbait, right? So this is the concept I call planting seeds, and something that, again, I've done for a long time, and it wasn't until I would find situations where the success didn't really line up, or it was better than it should have been logically looking at the situation and trying to reverse engineer, okay, what caused that to happen, and realizing that there was a pattern that I was using over and over, and that was this whole concept of planting seeds. So I want to tell you how, or one of the ways I first discovered that this was something that I was actually doing, and this was one of the first times where I was actually intentionally doing this from the beginning, as opposed to not just realizing afterwards, but doing it from the very beginning when working with someone in a professional environment. So this was back whenever I was doing online fitness coaching. And what I would do is, part of my strategy was to intentionally trick them if I had to, or brainwash them into getting the results they wanted. And there were a few ways I did this. So the first thing was in our very first consultation. So before, giving them a diet plan to follow and a fitness regimen and all that, first thing was just sitting down and just getting to know the person. And also the big thing is getting to know their why. So figuring out why is it that they are embarking on this journey, because my clients were usually going after some sort of transformation. So these were usually people who maybe they were athletes in the past, or they were in good shape in the past, and they had gotten out of shape, and they wanted to not only get back in better shape, but now they wanted to actually take it seriously and really make it a lifestyle. They wanted to just completely transform physically, but they also wanted that mental transformation as well. So this is, there's just different groups of people. Like, you have people that are competitive fitness athletes, and you have different groups, and they have different needs. So for this particular group, people who are kind of seeking that transformation, knowing the why is really important, because the mental aspect is way harder than the actual physical aspect of it all. And I know that I've got to set them up for this mental warfare with themselves, and I've got to have some ammo that we can use or we can deploy at different times. But they don't know that that's why I'm doing all this. Although I do explain to them how important it is to know their why and to always check back in with that whenever things get tough. But so that was the first thing, is I wanted to be armed with that. Then the next thing I would do is every time we would go over anything as far as the plan, the step-by-step stuff they had to do, I would explain in detail, but I would always tell them I would always give them the conclusion of what's going to happen, even if they don't realize it yet. So I would always describe not only what they need to do, why they need to do it, how it works, but I would specifically mention how they're going to feel along the way. And again, I would specifically mention things like the setbacks that are going to happen, the inevitable setbacks, the inevitable challenges, and just what the holistic experience is going to be like. Not just like, hey, all you got to do is follow these steps and it's all going to be easy, because that's not how it's really going to be. And I need them to not only be ready for it, but to expect it and to already have a plan to work around it or to overcome those challenges. And then beyond that, so besides going into great detail of what this whole experience is going to look like and how they're going to feel all along the way, even though it's kind of hard for them to wrap their mind around a lot of this. Initially they sign up, they're excited, they're super motivated, they think that, oh, it's going to be so easy, I'm just going to nail everything. So they would kind of overestimate their own effort and follow through, and then underestimate the knowledge gap between what they knew right now about diet and exercise and what they needed to know to really get results, right? So part of that was setting expectations, but part of it was also just making it very clear in their mind how this is going to play out, even though they didn't fully believe it yet, or it didn't fully make sense yet. And then the final piece here was just getting them to commit, just basically getting them to make a serious commitment that, look, just do your part and the rest will take care of itself. So if you can just follow the step-by-step plan that I give you, the rest of it will work itself out. There's going to be times when it doesn't look like it, but if you just stick with this, you just do this part, just do your part, then the rest of it will work itself out, even when it might seem like it's going to be the total opposite. And because of that, that was a big reason why not only were my clients getting great results, but they did not suffer the big setbacks that are very typical of that type of coaching client, where you just have, to be honest, a lot of people fall off and they just don't get back on the program. That's just a big problem for coaches, is just one, getting people to actually follow through in the first place to get going, but two, to getting people to stick around and stick with it for a long time. Because a lot of times people, it only takes like one bad setback and they're done and they give up. And so they either just totally give up or they just end up getting mediocre results. And one thing that I was very happy with was not only were people getting great results, but it was beyond physical. It was a mental transformation as well, but also the fact that I saw them get better and stronger mentally, and they were more resilient. That's the big thing, is that they were not, again, the big setbacks just didn't stop them. So, and then I got to where they were coming to their own conclusions on their own. I didn't have to spell this out for them. So, okay, now I want to take a step back. So what does this mean for your business? You're thinking, what's it have to do with email marketing? It has a lot to do with it, because I've used this, and I've mentioned this in a bunch of videos in the past, but I use this in everything when it comes to marketing, but especially email marketing. I find it very easy to apply this. And I'll tell you how this works. So if you consider your product or your service, whatever it is, and this works best for things where people are looking to get some sort of result, and especially, this is especially useful in times whenever they have to commit to something on their part. So whether that's taking supplements to lose weight or build muscle, or using some wellness, some creams to get better skin, whatever it is. But I'll talk about some other examples as well. But those are ones where this is especially useful. So what you want to do is you want to present the conclusion that they want to get to. You want to present an idea as this conclusion, even if they don't realize it yet. So you want to basically get them to be thinking about the end, so thinking about the result they want, but also this is where you start to plant the seeds of them getting to know their why. But a lot of times in email marketing, you're not going to just straight up ask them why. You can do that, and I would say if you do more direct response style copy, then it's a good way to do it. But a lot of time with brands, you do the thinking for them. You kind of assign their why because you've already done so much research on them. You know what their why is. So now you just call it out, and you don't have to need a bunch of copy to accomplish this. It could be done in one sentence. A good example would be a brand like Love Every, where if you look at all of the messaging on their site and then their emails and everything, you will see that the clear message or the clear why that they're targeting in their customers is that this person wants to be a good parent and they're afraid that they're not doing enough. So they are, I don't want to say exploiting that, but they are targeting that why, and they are presenting their products as a solution of saying like, look, this might be scary. This is all new to you. It might seem like you don't know what you're doing, but if you just, basically let your kids play with these toys, but obviously it's more than that, but more of just like, just go with the flow. These things have been tested. There's science backing all of this, and blah, 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 and things will kind of work themselves out. And, they make jokes about all the little mishaps and things that are going to happen along the way. But at the end of the day, it's the fact that you are showing up as a parent and being present and being thoughtful that you are going to get the end result you're looking for, and without any kind of like major struggle or, I don't want to like talk down on them, but basically it's kind of like, if you use our products, it's gonna solve all these problems, even though clearly it's not. But that's their marketing style. So okay, so the first thing is you want to start to present these ideas of the conclusions they want to get to, and also presenting the why that they either already consciously know or one that would resonate with them as being the main motivator for this. And then as you go along in future emails, you want to water the seed with supporting evidence, meaning that if you have anything where there's like scientific studies back, that back the results of this thing, you would continue to show that. So you would show why the ingredients in your face creams are great for skin and anti-aging and all that, and why the ingredients in your supplements can get the results that these people want. And then you do this over time, and it could also just be with reviews. Reviews are an excellent way to keep watering that seed that you've planted, that see other people have already gone ahead of you and they've already got the results you want. And one example that comes to mind for me me was a brand that I worked with that sold clothing there was kind of a quirky style. And what they found was that the women who would wear these clothes, that a lot of times they got more confident because they were wearing these clothes that were kind of quirky, which fit their personality, but they were the type of clothes that those women were in the past kind of scared to wear because they were afraid of being judged. But what would happen is, because these clothes had a really cool style, was that they would get a lot of compliments on it, which made them feel even more confident in not only wearing those clothes, of course, but just more confident in themselves because they were getting validation for their own personal style, which was a little different, but worked for them. So by planting this seed of, being more confident, being able to express yourself more, every single time they would leave a review talking about all the compliments they would get, those would be the reviews that we would continually share over and over in the emails, because that was continuing to water the seed of this idea that they may not have even realized yet. Like, they may have just thought that these outfits were cute, but they might not have even believed in their own mind that they were actually going to wear them. They might just wear them around the house or wear them, here and there. They weren't thinking that this is going to be not only a staple in their wardrobe, but this is going to be the start of completely changing their entire wardrobe to fit their own unique style. So when we present that idea from the beginning, and then we start showing them all the evidence, keep planting the seeds, watering the seeds over and over, it gets to where they eventually draw this conclusion on their own, right? So that's where you get to the end, where you can start to ask the questions that you already know the answer to, and you let them draw the conclusion. Because if they draw the conclusion on their own, they're going to be convinced that this was their idea, and that it's a lot more persuasive than thinking that someone else told you to think that way, if you feel like you actually just assessed the evidence and came to that conclusion on your own. So in the end, you get to this point where it's kind of like with my coaching clients, like whenever they would have setbacks, I would always just tell them, hey, they would just worry about, what do I do? Because a lot of times whenever you get down to the nitty gritty of dieting, you get to where you are busting your ass all day, every day for an entire week, and you lose maybe half a pound on the scale. And it's not very gratifying, right? Because you want to see more change because of how much work you put into it. And then one bad day of eating, you can literally add 3-4 pounds onto the scale, and you feel like just weeks of effort have been wasted. And that is where it's mentally very difficult for people to stick with it. But because I told them all along that these things are going to happen, that the scale is very deceptive, and we're not going to put as much emphasis on that as we are some of these other things, like how they look in the mirror, how they feel, how their clothes fit, how their body performs, those kind of things, that when this time comes, that if they can just ignore the emotions in their mind and just forget it, just pretend that day didn't even happen, and just go on, start the next day and pick up right where they left off before, that they will find that it will take 2 or 3 days, but that the weight that they gained will not only disappear, but then they'll be right back on track. And a lot of times, even getting that first week will get better results than they had in the couple of weeks prior. So what would happen is, the answer that I wanted them to, or the conclusion I wanted them to come to all along, which was the main thing I was trying to teach them as a coach, is that it was never about the specific diet or the specific training style. Those things are more about preferences. Yes, you have to fit within certain formulas, just working with human biology, but there's different ways to get to that result. What it was always about is the consistency. That was what it was always about. It's finding something that works for you, that you can stick with, and then actually following through and sticking with it. That's the answer. And once they could get that, they no longer needed a coach, right? They could just do it on their own. And so that was the conclusion I wanted them to have, and that was the seed I would originally plant. But it's hard for them to believe that, because for one thing, they're just constantly being told that this is the right way to do it, and this is the right way to do it, a million different ways, and they've tried all these different ways and none of them worked, and it's very difficult for them to believe. So they have to be guided along the way and be given reinforcement along the way, and then eventually they will come to the conclusion as if it was like an aha moment that they had just totally organically. And it's the same thing when it came to, for example, that business I was talking about with the clothing, that eventually they figure out it was never about the clothes themselves. It didn't really matter where they bought their clothes from. It was about freeing themselves to embrace their own unique style. That's what it was. It's just that we were presenting a vehicle in which they could feel good about doing that, in which they could kind of get themselves excited enough to actually follow through and do that. And the clothes were made well, and they looked really cool. So it was easier to get get compliments and to just to catch attention with those clothes. But again, the conclusion was the one that they had to figure it out by just doing it. So we had to persuade them to get there. So really quickly, the science behind this, why this works, is there's this thing in your brain called the reticular activating system. So I'm going to read this really quickly. Which is a bundle of nerves at our brain stem that filters out unnecessary information so the important stuff gets through. So if you've ever noticed that, like, let's just say, for example, you used to drive a car and all of a sudden you get a new Jeep, and then you're driving down the road and you notice everywhere you look, it seems like everyone's driving Jeeps. It's like they were always there, but you never really noticed them before. And that is the reticular activating system at work. So the things that we draw attention to, especially if we draw attention to them repeatedly, our brain will actually filter out the noise to continue to see more of that. So by planting seeds and then by continuing to water these seeds in our marketing, you are doing that exact same thing. You are getting the reticular activating system to filter out the other stuff and to see more and more evidence and see more of a compelling argument that this is actually true, this is actually what's happening, and that they can actually get the results they want. So that's the science behind it. So I say this is a secret hypnosis trick. It actually is a psychological, I don't want to call it a trick, but it is an actual psychological phenomena that happens in the brain, and it's a very normal part of our life. The problem is that we often aren't conscious of that. So things are influencing our reticular activating system without our control, or there are things that are trying to influence us that aren't in our best interest. So the assumption here is that whatever you're selling or whatever you're doing with this is that it's actually in their best interest. You're actually providing a good quality product. It's worth the money that you charge, all of that. So, but anyways, I know I've mentioned this a bunch of times, so I wanted to just go into a little bit more detail today on that concept and give you some ideas of, or at least give you a framework for how you can start to introduce this into your own marketing. So this is again, I'm not going to give you some step-by-step playbook because then you won't learn. You're going to have to actually figure this out, by following the steps. So, really learning about your customers, figuring out what is their why, what's driving them, and then also figuring out what is the conclusion that they need to get to experience the end result they want. And then how can you just leverage that why enough to just keep them motivated to follow, to do whatever the thing is, whatever it's just buying your product and using it or whatever. Just get them through it long enough until they can finally come to that conclusion on their own. And now they don't need you to convince them anymore. Now they're convinced, and now they become the type of people that are more likely to be repeat customers and also people who refer other people to your business. So that's it for this video. If you have questions about this or you'd like to see more videos like this, leave a comment below and let me know, because I have a lot more like this that I could share. I only want to do it if there's some interest. But yeah, that's it for this one. I will see you in the next video.